You can either use your computer. Let me just log in.
I log in to Zoom.
Yeah.
Okay. These are the 21 counties.
Yeah, those are the 21 plus Nairobi.
Where's 21?
2016.
Eh?
2016, please made a mistake.
20?
2016, 11, perfect.
2016, 11.
Yeah.
Okay. Cold properly. It seems I may not use my computer.
It seems we will not. I don't know how we will be able to
What are you looking for? Huh? Sorry, we're just linking with your people on Zoom. Can she be cleaning up all the things that she was meant to have done initially?
Hello, can you hear me? I don't scare visafi. It's nice and clean. For you? Okay.
Simon, you're just behind there?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I am activating the audio now.
My Zoom works fine. I don't know why it is so complicated for you now. Just join with computer audio.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Yeah. Stop video.
Okay. It can be heard.
Okay. But where's the screen? Are we sharing?
The screen?
Yeah.
We are not sharing, we can share. This one?
Yeah. Is it that one? Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. Right, my apologies for keeping you for a bit. We are trying to synchronize everything. I hope everyone is okay this morning. Our latest InfoTrack poll is the reason why we asked you to come in. We conducted a poll between the 23rd and 27th of May of this year. A large survey, 9,000 interviews. And yes, we've conducted surveys that are large before, but I think the interesting thing about this one is that it is 9,000 interviews. It covered all the 47 counties, but even more importantly is that we did not randomly pick constituencies. We covered all 290 constituencies as well. So point number one is it's a large survey, 9,000 interviews, giving us a margin of error of plus or minus 1. It covered all the 47 counties, and then we did not decide to purposively or randomly sample constituencies within those counties. We covered all the 290 constituencies. Okay? And today it was a very simple one. It was an omnibus. So in an omnibus, different people write their questions. Some of your colleagues in the media wrote some questions which indeed then belong to you. We will not be sharing those questions because those are your questions. Our questions were simply 3 questions. The first question was, do you intend to vote in the upcoming elections? Because of course, if you don't intend to vote, we can't ask you the next questions. For instance, who will you vote for? The second question we asked is then obviously, if you intend to vote, who will you vote for if elections were held today? That is typically an open-ended question. So we let the respondents tell us who they intend to vote for. And then, of course, just linked to that was the question on the popularity of the alliances or the political parties. Those are the 3 key areas that we asked. And then over and above that, the critical issues that we normally ask is, what are the key issues of concern for you today? What is pinching you? What is hurting you? What do you want addressed? And then linked to that was, what campaign agenda issues would you like addressed by the various presidential campaigns? Okay? So without much ado, I will take you through the results of the survey. So if we basically start off with the key issues of concern, then the key issues of concern for Kenyans have not changed. They have been the same, I believe, now for the last 2 years. The first and topmost issue of concern is the high cost of living. Half of Kenyans, and that's 53%, mentioned that high cost of living is something they want addressed as a key issue for them. The second thing is infrastructure in terms of roads and transport. So we have 49% of Kenyans saying deal with the high cost of living, but certainly also ensure that we have good road network and infrastructure, as mentioned by 49%. Unemployment is a third key issue of concern, and that was mentioned by 44% of Kenyans. And then, interestingly, even in urban areas, what we've seen in the last 2 years, consecutive 2 years, is access to clean water has become a very critical issue. Indeed, in Nairobi, it is one of the top 3 issues of concern for Nairobians, even in terms of the issues they want addressed. And then the fourth key issue of concern is access to health care. So what are the 5 key issues, therefore, just in a nutshell? Number 1 is Kenyans want the high cost of living dealt with, as mentioned by 53%. Then we need to deal with transport, roads, infrastructure, as mentioned by 49%. Then we have unemployment as a third key issue of concern, as mentioned by 44%. And then we have the fourth issue of concern, access to clean water, as mentioned by 40%. And then finally we have access to healthcare as the fifth key issue of concern. Of course, there were many other issues mentioned. Quality of education came after healthcare. You will see it as a campaign agenda issue. And here indeed, I think it's the confusion that's emanating from the transition of the old system of education to the CBC system, which is giving both parents and people in the education sector a lot of kind of like confusion and headache. We also have the cost of doing business as a key issue of concern, insecurity and crime. And I think there are people who have been saying in this particular election, good governance and corruption will not be a key agenda item. It is. And you will see that in terms of campaign agenda issues, corruption and how corruption will be dealt with is one of those things that Kenyans want addressed. So I've mentioned the key issues of concern. We also asked, what are the key things you want the presidential candidates to to include in their campaign agenda. The first one was, what is hurting you? What do you want addressed as a key issue, irrespective of who is doing it? The second one is, in those campaign agendas, which then translate into their manifestos, what are the campaign agenda items? What key things do you want addressed in the campaign agenda items? Number one will not change: the cost of living. So the runaway cost of living is something that anybody who wants to be the next president of Kenya must address in their manifesto, in their campaigns, in trying to endear themselves to us as Kenyans. If they don't address that issue, then indeed there are those of us who may then determine that they will not vote in the next election. So it needs to be something that we have our presidential candidates now, the four that have been approved and ratified, addressing as a key campaign agenda. The second key campaign agenda is unemployment. Those who lost jobs during COVID, those who are underemployed because they have gone through our education system and cannot gain gainful employment or employment commensurate to their academic qualifications, are basically saying to these people who want to lead us come September of this year, what are you going to do in terms of providing us and facilitating employment for us as Kenyans? So 50% of Kenyans mentioned as a second campaign agenda employment. What are those solutions that you're going to give us in terms of employment to Kenyans? The third campaign agenda is generally development. So what development activities are you going to partake in? And it's closely linked, of course, to then, employment creation and indeed reducing inflation and the high cost of living. But what we are also seeing, which the new administration and new government will have to deal with, is whether they will continue with education and the quality of education as it is. Will we have CBC continuing as it is? Will it be refined? Will we go back to the old system? But indeed, what the data is telling us is the transition from the traditional CPE system to the new CBC system has caused some sort of discomfort and almost a headache for the stakeholders of the country. So that then becomes the fourth campaign agenda. And then the fifth one is infrastructure. In a nutshell, what Kenyans are saying is, give us development, deal with the economy, give us social amenities, and then importantly is deal with good governance. So the fifth issue then becomes corruption. So dealing with corruption in their campaign agenda is something that presidential candidates cannot run away from. I've seen some pundits say corruption is not an issue in this election. It is for us as Kenyans. We want to know that if you're going to be taxing us, then that money that is taxed, is our tax, is being used properly. If we're going to, increase our debt ceiling, then that, money that is being borrowed from X, Y, and Z is going to be used properly and is not going to be going into people's pockets. There are many other things that were mentioned in the campaign agenda that include healthcare. Inequality in the country was mentioned. So how do we deal with the issues of inequality between the rich and the poor? National unity was mentioned. Social welfare was mentioned. They also mentioned the issue of hustler versus dynasty. So that again, I think, is something that is linked to the inequalities. The impact of COVID is something that cannot be ignored, and these are the things that encapsulate what Kenyans want discussed in the campaign agenda. I think I'd already mentioned that majority of Kenyans, when we talk to them, because that was the first question we asked, do you intend to vote? 95% of Kenyans said they do intend to vote. only 5% were either not sure whether they were going to vote or said no, they were not going to vote. And the reasons for not voting are very simple. It is the lack of confidence in the structures and the systems that are meant to ensure that we have free and fair elections. Some of them said the election is already decided, so there is no point. Some of them are saying IBC needs to instill a bit more confidence or a lot more confidence in us that they are prepared for the next election. Some are fearful that because it is such a high stakes game, there may be violence that is associated, and they do not want to see a repeat of what has happened in past elections. So we have 95% who intend to vote in the next election. It is very similar in terms of high voter turnout to 2017 election 1, when, if you recall, we had 78% of Kenyans who voted in 2017. Okay? So, I think what has brought most of you here, other than the campaign agenda issues and the key issues, is if elections were held today, which is what the question we asked and is the popularity question, who would you vote for? When we did this survey about 4 weeks ago, it was neck to neck for the two key contenders. Let's be clear, this is going to be a two-horse race. We said this last year, we called it as a two-horse race. We're the first posters to do so. Now we have 4 teams that have been cleared by IEBC. But indeed, what we are seeing, which is a no-brainer, is that it's going to be a two-horse race. Two-horse race with the UDA Kenya Kwanza team and candidate, which is William Ruto and Rigathi Gachagua. And then we also have, the Azimio side with Raila Odinga and Martha Karua. And because it is a two-horse race, in the first one that we saw, because I want to give you a trend, what we did see is that before the running mates were mentioned, it was a neck-to-neck race. Okay? So Raila was at 42%, Ruto was at 42%. That was in early May, right? And then we now have 23rd to 27th May, when we did this survey, after the decision was made on running mates, we see Raila maintaining at 42% currently, but Ruto has gone down. So his percentage is now at 38%. This probably tells us that the decision on running mate has worked to the disadvantage of one party, but has not significantly, as would have been expected yet, incrementally increased the popularity of another party. So Raila has maintained at 42%, which means that he is now leading, and Ruto has gone down from 42% to 38% since the mentioning of running mate. Okay? Because we have done this survey across the 47 counties, we have the luxury today to tell you who is leading in which counties, and which counties will be swing counties, and who is basically not going to get much in specific counties. So indeed, those are some of the things that I'm going to mention to you right now. So if we look at Raila with his 42%, and we assume that 95% of Kenyans are going to vote, which is near 100, 22.2 odd million voters, then that translates for him to 9.3 million votes today. He will be leading in 20 counties, and indeed he would have 25% popularity in 37 of the 47 counties. Let me read out the counties where Raila would be leading before I go to the regions specifically and read them out to you. So as I've mentioned, 42% for him, it translates to 9.3 million votes. He will lead in 20 counties, and it is as follows. At the coast, Raila would be leading in Mombasa, he would be leading in Kilifi, he would be leading in Taita Taveta. In northern region, because now we have clustered Isiolo and Marsabit in the north, so it's not northeastern, Raila would lead in Garissa, Wajir, Mandera, and Marsabit. In lower eastern, he would lead in all the 3 counties. However, what we will perhaps see now is an increase in his margins in lower eastern, because when we did this survey, Stephen Kalonzo was still indicating that he would be a presidential candidate. So that is important for you to note. So he would then be leading in Makueni, Machakos, and Kitui. In Western, Raila would lead in Busia, in Kakamega, and Vihiga. In Nyanza, Raila would lead in Siaya, Kisumu, in all of them. Siaya, Kisumu, Homa Bay, Migori, Nyamira. And then he would also be leading in Nairobi with 50%. Ruto, with his 38% currently, would then garner 8.4 million votes. He would be leading in 16 counties. He would also have 25% popularity in 38 of the 47 counties. So what this says is they already meet the threshold of having 25% in half of the counties. What none of them is meeting right now is the 50+1, okay? Because we have the undecided vote. But where are Ruto's strongholds in terms of counties? In northern, Ruto leads in Isiolo. In mountain region, he leads in all. So Ruto is still leading even after, the decision on the running mates. Ruto is leading in Laikipia, he's leading in Embu, he's leading in Meru, he's leading in Kiambu, in Murang'a, Nyandarua, Tharaka Nithi, Nyeri, and Kirinyaga. Those are his strongholds. Ruto is also leading in South Rift, in Kericho, and in Bomet. Ruto is also leading in Uasin Gishu, in Elgeyo Marakwet, in Nandi, and in Baringo. So those then become the 16 counties where Ruto has a clear lead. It's indisputable. We then also looked at what we considered to be swing or battleground counties, and what led us to make this decision are 2 things. One is that the percentages in terms of popularity in those counties was either similar, so both of them were getting the same percentage, or the difference in percentage was less than 10%, and we knew the dynamics that were taking place in some of those counties. Okay, so and it may be debatable to you, but you look at the numbers. We have 11 counties where we feel whoever is able to take those 11 counties may get their 50+1. All right. At the coast, there are 3 battleground counties. Tana River is a battleground. Kwale, which hitherto used to be a Raila stronghold, is a battleground county. Lamu is a battleground county. In northern, we have William Ruto is leading, Raila is leading slightly into Turkana, but we believe it is a battleground county. So in northern, Turkana is a battleground county. In South Rift, Narok and Kajiado are battleground counties. In North Rift, we have Samburu, we have Nakuru, and we have West Pokot as battleground counties. And then in Western, we have 2 battleground counties, that is Bungoma and Trans Nzoia. Okay? So that then gives you an indication in terms of the battleground counties. If I now, and if you like to, I can take you through the regions one by one and give you the percentages very quickly, so that you can get an indication of what the popularity is. Let me start off by telling you how the percentages for Raila and Ruto as 42 and 38 are by the regions that we have. So if we look at Nyanza currently consolidated, Raila is leading in Nyanza with 73%. Ruto has 12% in Nyanza. I will give you the undecided at the very end. In Nairobi, Raila has 50%, Ruto has 30% in Nairobi. At the coast, Raila is leading with 49% at the coast, Ruto has 29%. In Northern, Raila has 49%, Ruto has 32%. In Western, Raila is leading with 48%, Ruto has 28%. In Lower Eastern, Raila has 41%, Ruto has 32%, and the undecided was significant at 21%. And this was at that point where Stephen Kalonzo had kind of like temporarily bolted out of Azimio. Okay? And then we have the mountain region. In the mountain region, Ruto leads, 52% for Ruto in the mountain, and Raila has 27% in the mountain region. In South Rift, Ruto leads there as well with 59%, Raila has 25%. In North Rift, Ruto is leading with 56%, and then, Raila has 20%. That then gives us the consolidated total of 42% for Raila, 38% for Ruto, and then we have the undecided vote, which is 20%. I know you're going to ask how this undecided is panning out, and secondly, has the female vote, or is the female vote doing anything with regards to, changing with the dynamics of running mate. So let me give you the numbers in terms of popularity by gender. So if we look at the popularity right now by gender, what we see is that of the females, Raila has 38% of female vote right now, but Ruto also has 37%. So even after the decision was made on the running mates, of all the women who said they are going to take part in the election, Raila has 38% of the female vote, Ruto has 37% of the female vote. Has the female vote dynamic therefore changed in terms of the running mates selected? Not as yet. We cannot see it as yet. However, what we do see is that 25% of the female vote currently is undecided. Okay? So whoever then now will be able to endear themselves to the women folk will then be able to convince the 25% of those women folk who are undecided. If we look at the male vote, then Raila has a higher percentage of the male vote at 45%. And then William Ruto has 39% of the male vote. The male vote is less undecided. They're more convicted. So only 15% of the male vote currently is undecided. If we look at, the age bands, then what do we see in terms of the age bands? Who is popular with which age group? Amongst the 18 to 26, right now, each one of the candidates garners 37%. So in the 18 to 26 category, which is the youngest lot of voters, Raila has 37% of the vote, Ruto also has 37% of the vote. If we look at the 27 to 35, which is the older youth, then we see that Raila currently has 41% of the older youth, and Ruto has 39% of the older youth. And then we see that amongst the more mature population, 36 to 45, Raila has 44%, Ruto has 38% of that age group. In the 46 to 55, Raila has 43% and Ruto has 35%. The undecided vote is generally very high amongst the 18 to 24 at 24%, but we also see the older generation currently having about 21 to 23%, undecided vote. If we look at the popularity of the candidates by their political parties, then if we look at UDA and those who said they support UDA, 94% of those who support UDA say they would vote for William Ruto. We have only 5% who are undecided, and 1% said they would vote for Raila. On the flip side, for ODM supporters, 93% would vote for Raila, 1% would vote for Ruto, and 6% of ODM supporters are currently undecided. What about Jubilee? 83% of Jubilee supporters would vote for Raila, 6% would vote for Ruto, and then we have 10% who are undecided. Of the Wiper, voters, we see, or supporters, we see that 49% of Wiper supporters would vote for Raila, 8% would vote for William Ruto, and 31% generally at that point, because Kalonzo was going to be vying, said that they would vote for others, and under others, essentially it was Stephen Kalonzo, and undecided would have been, 12%. ANC, of the ANC supporters, 20% would vote for Raila, 70% say they would vote for Ruto, and the undecided in ANC would be 10%. I think what is important to tell you then is what the political party numbers are, so that you can see them in perspective. So UDA currently in terms of popularity is at 35%, ODM is at 34%, Jubilee's popularity is at 4%, Wiper is at 2%, ANC, Ford Kenya, and all the others consolidated have a popularity that is at only 2%. There are those who are either undecided or do not have a political party, and those are consolidated at 24%. That generally brings me to the end of what we covered in this poll. If you have any questions, I can answer them right now. Thank you very much. Yes. Do you want to start? Start off then.
Kagina with K24. I have two questions. The first one is...
Kagina, you... Yes. Ongea na sauti.
I'll ask two questions. The first one is, the sample size is 9,000. Yes. I'd love to know the success rate. The second question, which might come as a follow-up question, is who funded the poll?
Okay. Should I take Kagia's questions and maybe two others, so that we are more efficient? So yours is on the methodology and funding of the poll and success rate. Yes?
Yeah, I have one question.
Yeah.
And mine is an application. You mentioned that there are some of the reasons that the influence from...
Who are you? Who are you?
Sorry.
Hi, Frederick.
Yes, from KBC.
Yes, Frederick.
Yeah. Just clarify on that. Maybe the reason behind the fall of percentage of readers.
Okay. So fall in the popularity. Okay. Yes. Yes, sir.
From the Daily Net. Have a quick from the Daily Net.
Dubi. Yes.
So the question about the interviews, maybe you could elaborate more the methodology used to carry out. You used the phone.
Okay. Okay. So methodology. Yeah. And you'll get that in the write-up. I just.
And then the issue of debt, did it come as an issue of concern for Kenyans when you are carrying out the interviews?
Debt.
Yes.
Okay, we will see. Okay, can I start with those ones? So in terms of methodology, Kagia, you asked about the methodology. 9,000 interviews conducted between the 23rd, what did I say to you? 23rd and 27th of May. They're generally computer-assisted telephone interviews, okay? So it is done using a method called CATI, which means that we call the respondents. Indeed, that is perhaps the only way we can expedite it in that short a time frame, but also because the questions were not many. The second question you then asked is, what was the success rate? The success rate generally for us is high because we go out with a specific percentage or sample that we have to achieve. So if there's a drop-off, we then substitute that drop-off for that particular sample area with another one to achieve the sample. So if our sample target was 9,000, we still wanted to achieve the 9,000, and it means therefore that if a respondent drops off for whatever reason, the rule of thumb is very simple, that we don't bias a respondent. We give the respondent 3 chances. So assuming we reach out and call you and you say, I'm busy, we call you 3 times. We cannot substitute you with somebody else. We call you 3 times. If after the 3rd time we are still unable to reach you, you are substituted with someone who would be similar to you in terms of your demographics. And therefore, we still try to achieve our 9,000 because 9,000 was our sample. Okay? So that then becomes our success rate. We're not doing it and saying we wanted to achieve 9,000, but we have only been able to because we called Kagia 3 times and we couldn't reach him, and there were maybe 100 of them. We only achieved 8,900, for instance, right? Because we want to be sure that when we are doing our analysis by the different administrative regions, the proportion to size remains as is and does not distort the numbers that we are looking at, right? Are you getting it? There are surveys where the success rate is then determined because we'll say we tried and all we could get was 50% of the sample.
So is it fresh database or a pre-existing database for the sample size?
Fresh in what way?
Did you use a sample size that you had previously in terms of database, or did you gather fresh database for this particular?
We have a database right now ourselves, which I think is over maybe 1 million people, right? How do they qualify to be respondents in the survey? First of all, for you to be a qualified respondent, you must not have participated in a survey in the last, is it 3 months? 3 months, okay? So you are not a recycled respondent, right? And then secondly, the determination of whether you're going to be a respondent or not, Kagea, is not done by us. It's done by a computer algorithm, which is called a dialer. So the dialer then will run through all the contacts that we have and select the contact. If it knows it needs to take 200 contacts from Nairobi, it will select randomly the contacts in Nairobi and assign it to all the people in the call center who are the researchers. Okay? So that then is the question on that. Funding, I started by saying this was an omnibus. We are conducting another omnibus in 2 weeks. What happens with an omnibus is we reach out to various stakeholders, media owners, civil society, political parties, any interested party, and we say we are going out and our survey is going to be 9,000. Do you have any questions that you may want to ride? And of course they pay for their questions. So different parties have different questions that they run on, but they enjoy from economies of scale. It is cheaper than doing your own survey. Yeah, it's the same way if you're going to Mombasa, it's cheaper if you buy a ticket and go into a bus than if you hire a car and go alone. That is why it's called an omnibus. Yeah, so in this particular case, we had 2 questions which were our questions, or the 4 questions. key issues of concern, campaign agenda, intention to vote, and popularity. Those are InfoTrack questions which we have invested in within the omnibus. There were many other questions in that omnibus which are not ours, which we cannot share with you. Okay? The other day, we released a survey which was not an omnibus. It was a proprietary survey with a media house, and that data then belonged to them. It was not our data. We could not even have a session like this with you. Okay, so that is how omnibuses work, and most pollsters do that. When we want to have the comfort to call all of you, we then invest in an omnibus. Because if somebody else is paying for it, the data belongs to them. They then decide how they use that data. In many cases, we don't share it. But when we do share, we will tell you we've done it with CMD like we did yesterday, or we've done it with whichever person who has funded the survey. Right? The other question that was asked is, what could have resulted in the fall in popularity of Ruto? I would perhaps put it, your guess is as good as mine, but I would put it at, we can see that the issue of selection of running mates obviously had some sort of influence on the perception and the feelings of popularity of candidates. So the picking of Rigathi as running mate has not necessarily worked in the favor of Raila by increasing his popularity in Ruto strongholds. What it has done for Ruto, I don't know who asked the question, I'm trying to look at. What it has done for Ruto is that there is an increase now in undecided voters in his stronghold. So we see, if you recall, I had said that in Central, the undecided vote, or in the mountain region, the undecided vote was now standing at 20%. Ruto was at 52%, and Raila was at 20%. So I hope that answers your question. Are you with me? Are we together? Has it answered your question? It may answer your question. Yeah? So you've picked your running mate. I'm not saying now I've left you. I'm just thinking through whether I'm still going to be with you. So the undecided vote in the case of Ruto's stronghold, especially in Mountain, has increased somewhat, but it has not gone elsewhere. Yeah? So we see that when we did the survey before, they were both at 42-42. Raila has maintained at 42. Ruto has gone down to 38, and God knows whether all the activities that are taking place now will result in his numbers going up, or that indeed the activities that Azimio is doing between Martha and Raila may indeed endear part of the strongholds of Ruto, endear to the women. We've seen that 25% of women are undecided. They've not yet made their decision as significantly as we would have expected. We would want to see whether that will change with all the campaigns that are taking place. Okay? Then I think the other question that was asked was, is debt an issue? So we see that debt in itself has not been mentioned as an issue per se, but what we do see is issues emanating around the economy are all over the place. High cost of living, cost of doing business, poverty reduction, all these things I think are kind of linked to debt. So in essence, if you go and talk to common mwananchi, unless you prompt them and say, is debt an issue to you, I'm doubtful many people will talk about debt as an issue. What they'll talk about is what is hurting them. And what is hurting them is that when they go to buy things today in the shop or supermarket, 100 shillings cannot buy for them what it could buy for them before. And we know that that is linked to the many things, including the cost of debt that we currently have in the country. Okay? Yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
About there's a place where you say the exact numbers. You say that that Raila Odinga will garner 9.3 million votes and William Ruto will garner 8 point something. So what do you use to determine these numbers, the number of votes?
Nation.
Yes, from Daily Nation.
See me, I just did basic math. So what we have not done yet, which we will do in future surveys, is that we have basically taken the 20, because IEBC has not given us an audited register yet. Currently, what we have is a somewhat, because they've not told us what their clean register is. We don't have access to it. I don't know whether you have access. Nobody does. So currently, we have 22.2 million voters in the register. If we add the additional new voters to the old ones who are 19 point odd something, and then what we have said is right now 95% have said basically they are going to vote, and then there is an additional I think 2% who said they are not sure. Only 2% said they are not going to vote. So what we then said is, let us assume for now that the 22.2 million are voting. Okay? Let's just assume that. Yeah? If those 22.2 million are voting, you just take 42% and it gives you 9.3 odd. Then you take 38, it gives you 8.4 million for Ruto. Then you take undecided and refuse to answer, which is 12 plus 8, which is 20%, which comes to 4.4. So if you add all those, then you get 22.2. We have not gone to the detail of looking at voter turnout in its entirety, because I think that will become clearer as we get to say 30 days to election. Yeah? Because right now, there's still, people are still making up their minds. Yeah? So we're just saying all factors left constant. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Dickens from TV.
Yes, Dickens.
As per the data, the analysis, the research you've done, right now, neither of them will have 50 plus 1.
No.
So will there be a possibility of a rerun?
No. Yes, there's a possibility of a rerun, but they also have 4.4 million votes. There are 4.4 million. Listen, can we agree on one thing? We're saying everything, we're leaving all factors constant. If we leave all factors constant, we have a pot of 22.2 million voters. Right? Of these 22.2 million voters, if we say all of them went to the ballot, 42% today are clear that they're going to vote for Raila. That would result in 9.3 million votes. 38% are clear that they will vote for Ruto. That is 8.4 million votes. The 4.4 million who are the 20% undecided voters are not going to sit at home. They're going to vote in August. Yeah? So when they vote in August, that 4.4 million will either go to Ruto or will go to Raila. Whoever is able to convince the 4.4 million, which constitutes 25% of women who have said they're not voting, almost 25% of youth who are not decided, not that they're not voting, youth who are undecided right now. We have very high undecided, let me tell you where by region. Then you will see that 50 plus 1 is attainable. In Nyanza, you have 15% undecided. Who will get that? You can translate to whatever the millions are. In Nairobi, we have 18% undecided. At the coast, we have 22% undecided. In Northern, we have 19%. In Western, we have 23% undecided. In the mountain region, we have 20% undecided. In Lower Eastern, we have 21% undecided. We have in South Rift 15% undecided, North Rift 23% undecided. The total therefore is 20% undecided, right? Whoever can convince that 20% undecided vote to get to 50 plus one person wins. So as we speak, it's not necessary to have a runoff if you can convince the undecided voters. Is that clear? Yeah. And the undecided voters are really, I think, the guys who are perhaps not like the majority, who vote based on, is this guy from my place, or does this guy look like me, or has so and so said I vote this way. Maybe these are the guys who are saying, I need to read the manifesto, I need to be convinced, I need a bit more before I make up my mind. So they are I think the more discerning voter. This more discerning voter will continue to make up their minds in the coming days. Undecided will not remain this way in July, on July 30th. July 30th, I'm sure they'll have made up their minds. Right? Yes.
I'm Jeremiah from Ruto.
Yes, Jeremiah.
You have categorized Nakuru as one of the battles.
Yes.
Do you have any specific reason for that? My second question is, did you notice any changes in what the in
Kirinyaga.
considering its own
Yes. Okay. Good questions. Yeah. So when we were looking at the undecided, I said we looked at two things. One was, for instance, if Ruto is at 43, Raila is at 42, then we know that is a battleground. Sindio? Nakuru is not that way. Nakuru is this way. Nakuru has 46 for Ruto, has 24 for Raila, but increasingly now has 30% undecided vote. It has got one of the highest undecided vote basket. So where the undecided vote is that high, when generally if you heard me before, I was saying 15, 17, the highest was 20, Nakuru is at 30, then that becomes a place where you're saying there are other dynamics taking place, and we need to ask ourselves, what are these dynamics, and does it mean that the people of Nakuru, because it's so cosmopolitan, are saying we need to be convinced? We are not sure. So that is why Nakuru for us became an undecided region or county. Kirinyaga was interesting because when we looked at Kirinyaga, in the mountain region, where Ruto generally is high across the board, undecided is highest in the mountain region in Muranga, where we have 23%. Kiambu, which is cosmopolitan, we have 23%. I'm just trying to give you context. Then we have Kirinyaga itself, where the undecided vote is 21%, but the Azimio duo, so Raila only garners 19%. So not yet the traction that one would have been expecting in Kirinyaga. Yeah? Indeed, where you have very high numbers for the Azimio team in the mountain region are in Laikipia. So in Laikipia, Raila has 36, Ruto has 47. In Embu, Raila has 31. In Meru, Raila has 30. And in Kiambu, Raila has 30. In the rest, he has lower than that. But in Kiambu, in Kirinyaga, he has one of the lowest rankings. His ranking in Kirinyaga is at 19%, which is, as you can see, is lower than in other places.
The last question. From the sample size, the lower margin error, the report is believable.
Correct.
Have you had instances where politicians have approached you to run polls and release them in their favor?
We've had instances where politicians ask us to run polls and release them. We don't. We are right now having discussions with certain politicians in counties where they do want us to release polls. Our policy is very simple. If you want to ride on our omnibus, you ride on the omnibus. If it is an omnibus and it is a question which then you have bought into but belongs to us, then we release it irrespective. So we're not going to release it only because it's good for you. We release it whether it's good or bad. And indeed, in the near future, you will see us starting to do the county ones. We haven't done, because these ones, we couldn't do the county ones with this. We would not have been able to afford the cost because it's going to be a longer questionnaire. But now we will start doing the counties because the candidates, they are now candidates, they are not aspirants. So now we are going to start doing our county polls. There will be omnibus, so even you can buy into it and get the detail, but the core data will be ours. So we will be able to release it whether it is in favor of one party or the other.
So if I get you right, yes, there has been several attempts.
Attempts will be, of course attempts will be there. Yeah, I would be lying to you to say they are not. They happen, yes. Are we done? There's no lady. No lady wants to ask a question. 2/3. Aye. Huh? They're still they are not undecided. Okay, a lady, you must ask me a question, even if it's on women voters. The ladies, I'm looking at you. Any question? Uliza tu. Of course, it's very valid. Sorry? The margin of error is plus or minus 1 at 98% degree of confidence. So everything that we have told you is generally it's so much nicer because all you have to do is add or minus 1. Is a very good question because it's a methodology question. Thank you. Tuko sawa? Haya. Huh? You'd like what? Yeah, soft copy you're getting now from Bernadetta. Thank you very much. I think the Zoom guys have suffered because it went off. When I don't know what was happening. John, Simon, thank you. Umesimama hapo mpaka ukachoka. John, Zoom hakuna.
It is back. I brought it back. It came back later on. I think they're logged in.
Okay, are they okay?
I'm not.
You know, in fact, them they are lucky because them they were seeing that.
See, the whole thing is there. The thing is done.
These guys need copy now. Yeah. Just now. Sawa. Asanteni.
Well, that brings us to the end of InfoTrack Presser today, which focused on 9,000 people as a sample. And in a summary, this is what that poll's result has indicated, that before the choice of running mate, both candidates, that is Raila Odinga and William Ruto, were at par at 42%. But after the choice of running mate, there seemed to be a change in that percentage, which now went to Raila Odinga maintaining 42% and William Ruto had a decline to 38%. It is also worth noting that according to InfoTrack polls, that both of the candidates in which this poll has decided that the election, the presidential election, will be a two-horse race, is that if elections were held today, none of those candidates would garner 50% plus one votes. That means, or it indicates and points to the fact that there might be a runoff. That has been Marvin Gakonyi with Kenyans.co.ke from Lavington, and keep it Kenyans for more live updates.